Good morning, guys. So good to see everybody. It's good to be with you this morning, friends. Sorry about last week. uh, but I see all you guys in the chat. It's good to see your avatar faces again. Linda Connor, Julia Thomas, MJL, Redemax, Gerald, Reno Waddell, Stacia, and Rick. Good morning to all you guys. Thank you for joining this morning. Hope you've had a good week. I see a few of you are getting your coffee ready, so please do that. Yeah, some days I feel MJL, I feel a little quicker than others. This doesn't feel like a quick one, but we'll see. Tanda, good morning to you. And Sophia, it's good to see you. Cindy, good morning. All right, well, be thinking, guys, about what you're interested in talking about this morning. Again, as I've said before, and I talked to someone this week who missed it, but I have said this. The current format is that I wipe the slate clean every week. So please bring any topic you want this morning, anything you've seen this week, or, and by the way, I wanted to say, even for the new people, it's biblical and non-biblical topics. We can do anything you want. I'm not particular. These live streams are really for you guys. So I'll discuss anything you want to talk about. Stacia, thank you for mentioning the videos this week. I appreciate that. I got that 8th day video out, and that one was one I've been wanting to get out for a while, and just got a lot of irons in the fire. So Laura Masood, good morning to you. Squiffy Bear, good to see you. Squiffy Bear is my primary administrator on the channel for chat, so don't make her mad. She's my bouncer. Thank you, Stacia. You said the 8th day video was fascinating. Good. I hope that it brought a lot of things to light that things that I in the past I even have missed, in the past, and when you start to put all those pieces together, it makes a lot of sense. C. Jones, good morning to you. You ask, as a topic, how does Jesus, Revelation 20, and the 8th day idea all fit together? Revelation 19:20. Yeah, let's put that on the board, C. Jones. I'll talk about it. So let's see here. That's one. All right. B. Nichols, good morning to you. It's good to see you. Judy Berry, good morning to you. Sophia, you say, why did it change from the Old to New Testament from multiple wives to just one, or did it? If so, why is 1 Timothy 3:2 setting a rule for certain groups to take only one? Okay, Sophia, we'll do it. I've done this a little bit in the past, but there's no problem. I'll do a condensed version. Sometimes the more times I talk about these topics, the better I get at it. So hopefully I can do it in a brief manner. All right. It's good stuff. Squiffy Bear, you say, is David considered to be a prophet? Psalms 22:1, 22:18, 20. Yes, we'll do that. Squiffy, for sure. Yes, let's see. Get those verses in there, right? So I don't forget those. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's see. It's been a pretty nasty week as far as weather where I am, so I've had a lot of time to research. I stayed inside a lot. I've done a lot of reading, so I'll talk about the stuff I've been doing in just a minute, but yeah, it's been kind of nasty here, so I hope you guys have had better weather, but I guess as far as winter is concerned, it's not too bad because it hasn't been that cold. It's just been raining. All right. Laura Masood, did I say good morning to you? I saw you there. I just want to make sure I said hi to you. It's good to have you. All right. We'll keep throwing some topics out, guys. We got 3 now, but we can do a few more. Southern Bell 360, good to see you. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining. All right. Squiffy, you say you have the last vestiges of snow. Okay. And Stacia, you say the weather up there in the Pacific Northwest is questionable. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I talked to someone up that way not too long ago, and I was surprised that they tend to have milder weather. I think this was someone near Salem, and I was surprised. I figured they had tons of snow up there. I figured it was kind of like the New England area as far as snowfall, but they said no, it's really kind of temperate and moderate with a little snow every now and then, but not much. So it surprised me a little bit. Definitely. I need to get out more apparently and travel a little bit. Yeah, so last week I never tell what I'm going to do before I do it, but because it's after the fact, last week I was visiting my daughter's college, not visiting the college, but visiting my daughter and helping her with a few things. She just needed some extra help. So that's where I was. Just couldn't get the live stream together at that moment. Had too much going on. All right. Well, let me get started then. I mean, we can start with just the topics we've got, but I would encourage any of y'all, we've got room then for other things if you want to do other things. So go ahead and continue to think about if there's other topics you want to do and throw them out there as we go, and we will do whatever we can get to, we'll do it. So as far as this week, first let me announce a few things, just talk about the channel for the new people on the stream. Just so you're aware, everyone is welcome to the stream as long as you can be civil in conversation. This is what it's about. It's about talking with each other, sharing things, talking about things we can't talk about other places or we have a hard time discussing with people. Try to be open-minded here and discuss anything that comes to the board. And that's what you do here, and as a part of this stream is you drive. You tell me what we're going to do every week. And so that's the goal here. I'll decide the order that we do and how much we can get to, but we're going to discuss and share these topics. I expect you guys to participate in the chat. That's what makes it so fun. And so we just go on the fly, off the cuff, and we do it. And so if you're not aware already, I do have other platforms. I'm on the website that's on your screen, bible-scribe.com. And I kind of collect all the information there, and it is the hub of everything I do. I do put on there what's going on. And having said that, I think this week I actually forgot to update the part of the website that talks about the live stream, which is my mistake. But anyway, I usually keep it quite updated. And so that's a good way to know what's going on with me. There's also my emails on there. You can contact me by email. And so that's all the places I exist. I'm also on Facebook and Rumble. And we actually are streaming on Rumble today. I'm actually going to check that real quick because I don't want to mess up. Again, I've messed up 2 times in a row on our Rumble stream. And I don't want to miss it again. I want that thing to be working. Yeah, it's on. It's going. That's great. Thank you to my Rumble viewers. Appreciate you. Sorry I've messed up so much lately. But as far as what's new for me, what I've been doing this week, I'm in some really, really deep study. And this is thanks partly to you, Stacia. You kept asking me about Ishmael and Islam. So I did a deep dive into Islam. Deep dive. Trying to understand the origins. Who is Allah? What happened in Muhammad's life that led him to this whole revelation he got from Gabriel, so to speak. and what happened with the religion. What did it do after that? What did it do throughout history? And that actually led me to the Catholic Church. And so then I started doing this exhaustive study on the origins of the Catholic Church and the history behind the Catholic Church. And there is connective tissue between the Catholic Church and Islam. So all of that being said, I think that body of research is going to produce 2 videos. I believe that it will first be about the Catholic Church, that I'll do that video first. And then the second video is going to be about Islam and why Islam was formed, what it did throughout history, and the goals that it achieved. Yeah, so I'm trying not to reveal too much. It's really powerful and it's deep. And so whereas I think some of the things I will talk about have been addressed by other channels, I don't think, or other, researchers, I don't think, again, it's one of those things, I don't think you will find exactly what I'm going to do anywhere else. So I would encourage you guys to stick around for that, or be aware that it's coming. Those videos are going to be, for me, they're going to be, for me, very exciting. So I'm excited about it. But that being said, I'm probably going to lean away from discussing much about Islam or the Catholic Church that might spoil those those videos. So I'll just be careful about that as we go here. But anyway, so that's kind of what I'm doing. I am currently also rereading a book that I've read before, and it's for specific reasons, not necessarily related to that research, but this book is called Final Events, and it's by a man named Nick Redfern. And it's supposedly a book, and I'm still, because I'm rereading it to kind of decide for myself whether I feel that it's really a credible account. I mean, most of the information in that book is really good. And it's supposedly about a group that was within the government, formed by one of the military groups that for probably decades was built to identify the connections between occult practice and the UFO phenomenon. And it's a very interesting book, and it has a lot of very well-sourced information. So it puts a lot of FOIA documents from the military and all these clandestine groups in the book itself. So there's a lot of credibility there. But Redfern, I believe, comes at it from a kind of premillennial dispensational mindset, as far as, because this group apparently, over the course of their study, they research the UFO phenomenon, which they believe is demonic, and they research all the things surrounding that and the occult, and they come to the conclusion that they see it leading towards an apocalyptic end of the world. And so, again, related to like what I did in the 8th day video, again, I'm rereading the book just to assess the information once again. It's been a while since I read it, and it's actually a really interesting read. So if any of y'all are interested in that, Nick Redfern's book, The Final Events, or Final Events, is quite interesting. I will say that. Not that it's all 100% right, but it's very interesting, and it's very well researched. So, all right, I'll leave that aside. Now, I've seen that you guys have put a couple things in the chat for topics. Let me make sure I get them before we move on. QB, good morning to you. I see your question here. Could Tartarian Kahn be the king of the north and the Roman Greece Caesar the king of the south? I will put that on the list, QB, but I'm unfamiliar with this idea, but I can put it on the list and we will see what we will see. So let's see here. QB, you say, making a revived Tartaria, the Magog, and G7 Gog. Interesting. I'm trying to think through that. We can do the best we can do with this. I do have actually some interesting information about Tartaria that I ran across recently that I was going to do a video on, a short video, and maybe I can do that today. Maybe that can be part of this as we start to talk about Tartaria again. I think I may do that. Ed Davis, good morning to you. I see you on there. You say all roads lead to Rome. Yeah, somewhat sounds a little true based on the research I'm doing. Tomcat, you say, and Catholic rituals seem very Jewish temple-like. Well, so I'll challenge you, Tomcat, in that statement. Not that you're wrong, you're very right. But instead of it looking Jewish, do the Jewish and the Catholic and the Islamic rituals look pagan? Okay, it's just a different perspective twist to think about. Is it all pagan instead of all Jewish focused? Anyway, Laura Masood, you say topic of eclipses. Are they bad omen? Does the Bible say anything about this, or is it just superstition? Let's see here. I will talk about that. I like that topic. I'm very interested in that topic. So let's talk about eclipses. I like that a lot. There's a few things I can think of that I could say about that, and then if there's something we want to look up, I know the places that I can tell you source-wise, but I think taking the time to look them up might take too much time. So I'll see what we can do there. I think we can do that. Now I've got 5 on the board, guys. So let me just show you what we have. If it's big enough. I always have trouble with this word processor program making things kind of fit. Let's see. Let's do this view. That's easier to read for you guys. C. Jones' topic of how does Jesus in Revelation 19 and 20, the 8th day idea, fit together? And then Sophia Suderman, why did it change from the Old and New Testament from multiple wives to just one, which essentially we're talking about polygamy here. Why was polygamy okay in the Old Testament if it was, and why is it not in the New? And then Squiffy Bear, you say, is David considered to be a prophet? And you mentioned these verses. We can definitely go through. QB, you asked if Tartarian Kahn could be the king of North and Rome or Greece, and Caesar is the king of the South. Excuse me, I said that wrong. If the Tartarian Kahn is the king of the North and the Roman or Greek Caesar is the king of the South, making a revived Tartaria and Magog, represented by bricks. I'm not sure about that, what that means, and G7 Gog. So, yeah, we'll get into Tartaria a little bit there. I'll try to make an attempt at what you're asking about, and you can clarify as we go. Laura Masood, your topic on eclipses. Are they a bad omen? Does the Bible say anything about this, or is it superstition? Yes. All right. So that's our topics for today so far. That doesn't mean we can't do more, but we will see. Okay, DZL, good morning to you. You say, do I see a connection between Ezekiel 38:39 to Revelation 27 through 10? We'll talk about that. All right. And you feel it gives more detail to Revelation 20. Yeah, good. We'll go into that. Okay. All right, guys. So with that, let's pause for a second and we will just say a little prayer. If you guys, as we're doing this, you think of any requests you'd like to make known to me, I do have a group that will pray for you. And so if any requests that you put in the chat, I will relate to that group, and I personally will pray for them also. So with that, let's bow our heads and I'll say a quick prayer. Lord God in heaven, the Most High God, I pray to you today, and I thank you so much for this time. Pray that you give me clarity of thought so I can help guide and lead, and that everyone on the call enjoys this time where we can discuss, gather, learn. Help us to do just that. Please bring truth to our minds, to our eyes. And help us to be honest with you and ourselves in this situation. And we just give it all to you. We give glory to you, Father, in heaven. And it's in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, that we pray. Amen. All right. Thank you guys so much. All right. Let's get warm. Let's get ready. Let's get into it. All right. So C. Jones started us off with, how does Jesus, Revelation 19:20, the eighth day fit together? Okay. How am I going to say that? Let's put that on the title here. How does Revelation 19:20 fit with the eighth day concept, I guess? So that's our first topic of the day. All right. So Revelation 19 and 20, let's do this. I will bring it up on the screen so we can start diving into, take a few things here. Okay, so Revelation 19. So I think you guys remember, and let me do this. Let me do this also because I think it's important to relate it. You might be thinking, hey, how does it relate to, oh, that's horrible. It's terrible things on my screen. Don't look. Bible scribe. We don't care about that stuff. We care about this stuff. In this video, the eighth day that I did, I don't want that to play music or sound. This timeline, I think, is crucial to what you're talking about. So let me get also a pen so I can draw on this thing because I'm going to need to do that and show you kind of how it all fits together. And in fact, this is one thing I want to do in the near future. I've had a request from a couple of people to say, hey, do you have the timeline of everything? Like the whole history, can we see a timeline? And I do kind of have that in some older videos, but I probably could refine it and make a new timeline and really go through all of history in that to show exactly where everything lays out. But with that being said, this is the timeline that was in this video for the 8 days. Of course, here's what we need to think about. So if we were talking about where are we on this timeline, I believe we're right here. That says, I don't want to say verses, I want to say us. I'll say now. Okay, so I believe we're right there before the end, honestly. So that puts some things on here we can talk about. Jesus came in prophetic terms in the year 5500 from creation. So from creation to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 5500, okay? I'll put the cross here so you see that. Okay, so that's Jesus. So Revelation 19 and 20 is an interesting question, C. Jones, because when we go to chapter 19, let's hide those things. Chapter 19 talks about this battle, okay? It talks about a battle. John falls at the feet of the angel and wants to worship him. The angel says, don't do that. I'm your fellow servant. I'm not to be worshipped. I have the testimony also of Jesus. Worship God. You know, this is another interesting thing that when it comes to my views on Christ versus God. The angel tells John, hey, I'm your fellow servant. I have the testimony of Jesus also. And then he says, worship God. He doesn't say worship Jesus. Interesting, isn't it? Just something to think about. But this passage after that, it says he sees in heaven, it opens, and a white horse, and this rider on the horse is called Faithful and True, and he's judging in righteousness and making war, and that is Christ. Okay, that's Jesus Christ himself, the Son of God, the Most High, the Son of the Most High, the Logos, the expression of God. He was begotten before creation. And so that's who this is. His eyes a flame of fire, on his head are many crowns, has a name written that no man knows but himself. He's clothed with a vesture dipped in blood. His name is called, what? The Logos of God. Okay? So that is definitely Jesus. And the armies which were in heaven followed him. Out of his mouth went a sharp sword, that he could smite the nations. This is an important word we're going to have to think about. And he would rule them with a rod of iron. He treads the winepress of the fierceness of the wrath of the Almighty God. And he said on his vesture, on his thigh, a name written, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, etc., etc. He says to the fowls that fly in the midst of the Oranos, heaven, to gather yourselves to the great supper, to the supper of the great God, that you may eat the flesh of kings and captains and mighty men and horses, and of them that sit on them, in the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. I saw the beast and the kings of the earth. Now, this is where it gets interesting. They all gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. The beast that was taken, the false prophet, they were cast alive in the lake of fire, burning with fire and brimstone. The beast and the false prophet were done away with after this battle, and this all happened in 70 AD. Okay, the key words here, like I mentioned, are nations up here, and then the flesh of kings, and it's the beast and the kings of the earth. Now, and that word earth, by the way, is land, the beast and the kings of the land and their armies. All those words, nations. Now, you could try to see this as a very physical battle, okay, a very physical thing. And some people try to do that. The problem is that word nations generally in prophecy refers to the principalities of the nations. So the principalities, the angels over the nations. And in fact, when it comes down here, it says the kings of the land and the beast. Well, the beast we know is a spirit. It's a spiritual creature. It's a demon. And the kings of the earth are these principalities of the nations and their armies. So this is a spiritual battle, okay? The false prophet is also an entity, a spiritual entity. And the beast and the false prophet are thrown into the lake of fire, okay? The other interesting thing here is the word foul in Greek. This word is generally used in prophecy also as a reference to demonic activity, unclean spirits, not just birds. And that's what we translated it to. But the word orneon in Greek is often used for that other thing as well. So when you put all that together, you know, if you try to say, hey, this battle was physical, and you try to equate that to like Rome or something goofy like that, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit because there was no, God didn't fight against Rome in 70 AD. The Roman army was totally successful in destroying Israel, or destroying Jerusalem, or taking it over rather. And then they kind of demolished it after the battle. So you can try to make this a physical battle, but it's not. It's a very spiritual battle. It occurred. It's called the Battle of Armageddon. And you can look up things like the Valley of Jehoshaphat. You can look up the Valley of Decision. Those prophecy references, those phrases are used to describe this battle in other places. The Valley of Judgment. All these different things, this is where the spiritual war was waged. Now this, on our timeline, if I go back to our timeline, if I can make it stop. Okay. So on our timeline, this battle would have been waged, if Jesus came in 5500, then just after that would be the battle in Jerusalem in 70 AD. This is Revelation 19. I'm not very good at drawing with my mouse. Revelation 19 happened right after, at 70 AD essentially. So on this timeline, it's a big timeline, 40 years after Christ came and was crucified, resurrected, 40 years, then Revelation 19 is occurring. It's a spiritual battle. Now, then we come to Revelation 20. So Revelation 20 is talking about something altogether different. I mean, it's what happens after that battle, but it goes way far in history because it's 1,000 years, thousands of years really is talked about in this passage. So he saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit, a great chain. He lays hold of the dragon, Satan, calls him the serpent, devil, Satan, binds him 1,000 years, shuts him up, and he could deceive the nations no more for that 1,000 years. And that after that, he would be loosed a short time. Okay? And so what we see then in this timeline, if that's what we're talking about, at that same time of Revelation 19, and I'll put on there 70 AD, so we know, that's the start of that 1,000 years. And on this timeline, because of the size, the 1,000 years would have been this time period here. Boop. And this is not, it's a little too small for me to get everything in here, but I hope. So actually, I don't really want it to be that. Hold on, let me try to clean that up a little bit. Wish I could make it bigger. I don't have all the tools ready for this. So if the 1,000 years was this time period right here, that time period when Satan is bound, Christianity, by the way, is flourishing on the earth. And according to the research that I've studied now, I realize that during the beginning of that time period, Rome was being decimated inside and out, not by Christians, but by the breath of God. By God's work, there were plagues that killed hundreds of thousands of Romans. There was earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that destroyed cities. There were fires that swept through Rome well after 70 AD. They swept through Rome, destroying the pagan temples in Rome. All these things put together paint this picture that God was waging war on Rome during that time period, destroying it. And then also, guess what? From the outside, Rome was being attacked multiple times throughout the first few centuries from different Christian invader groups. Now, this is part of what I've started studying and learning that's blowing my mind. The Huns, we call them in history, they are told to us as they are barbarians, right? Did you know every group that attacked Rome that is called barbarian was a Christian group? They had been Christianized by missionaries. And they also had views that diverged from the Catholic Church. This is part of what I'm learning that's going to be in these videos. Okay, I'm getting goosebumps. So I'm going to stop revealing information from my new videos and stay on this. But just so you're aware, that 1,000 years is remarkable, okay? And a lot of things happened during that time. So when we come back to Revelation 20, we continue. We see that Satan is loosed then after the 1,000 years. And then we see the battle of Gog and Magog occur in verse 8. And then we see the final judgment, the great white throne judgment in verse 11. So on the 8th day timeline, we come here. The great white throne judgment, especially according to what the things I went through in that 8th day video, that great white throne judgment is where the fire occurs. It's almost at that exact same time. So the way it plays out in not only the stuff I referenced in that video, but in the early church fathers, is that the consummation of the earth by fire is first, and then that immediately starts the final judgment. That God takes his white throne and judges all mankind, everybody, all the dead. And it talks about that in Revelation 20. And then the reason that occurs is because the earth is consummated, and for everyone to enter into heaven, there has to be a judgment that takes place. Of course, Christians are judged on account of the blood of Christ. But those who are not, it mentions in Revelation 20 the dead being judged according to their works. And that's actually in a few other places as well. I think it's in the scripture a couple times, but then the early church fathers talk about that same concept, the judgment according to works. Not for Christians, mind you, but very interesting concept that, you can consider or think about. But that final judgment should happen after the 1,000 years, and then the short season that occurs right there before the final judgment, where Satan is loosed and he's deceiving nations again. He's deceiving everyone, and it gets a little hairy in there for sure. And the Battle of Gog and Magog is in there somewhere too. Now, I've talked about this before. The Battle of Gog and Magog, I can't 100% pinpoint. I will say that right here at that dot at the end of the 1,000 years is when the first crusade happened, because the Muslims, the Turks, had invaded and captured the Holy Land, and Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, decided they weren't going to have that. And so they sent the Crusaders to take back Israel, or Palestine, and specifically Jerusalem. And so if that's the camp of the saints, there's a possibility that may have something to do with what we see in the Battle of Gog and Magog. Now, I'm not 100% sure on that. The history is very sketchy for that time period. Like, there's just not a lot of information. So that's hard. But it's a possibility. Now, there's a possibility also that the Battle of Gog and Magog could happen, right before the end. I'm not saying I know. It's possible, because I just can't place that event based on what the scripture has in it, which is not much, right? So I hope that gives you the understanding, C. Jones, of that. Let me check you guys' chat, because I've now gone for a little bit. I want to see what you're saying. Okay, so all right. Good morning, Pancakes. Good to see you there. All right. C. Jones, you ask, and this is your topic, so I want to make sure to get to your questions. How do we know the living are judged at the great white throne judgment? It only mentions the dead being judged. Right, C. Jones. So I could agree with that. We can only go by what it says, right? And it does say that the dead are judged. Let's see what it says. It says, I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. I can go with that idea, C. Jones, that it's just the dead. It sounds like it is. So yeah, maybe my statement was a little too broad before, but I could go with that for sure. Yeah, it mentions the dead. So, and by the way, dead versus alive in the afterlife is the concept of people that are in Hades versus the ones that are in heaven. So the underworld is death and heaven is life, according to the spiritual concept of death and life. Because that it's spoken of that way in the scriptures too. When they say, oh, the dead shall live again. Well, it's talking about the dead in Hades going to heaven to live, right? Not living physically again. So, all right. Oh, Pancakes, that's great. You say you just found the channel, already sat and shared with your friends and family. Thanks for your hard work and dedication. I appreciate that. Thank you, Pancakes. I hope everybody gets something good out of it, and then we're just doing our best here. Ed Davis, you say exactly. Those who follow and believe are not considered dead. Oh, let me share the so y'all can see the chats too as we're talking here. Yeah. Yeah, Jesus did say, follow me and let the dead bury their dead. Interesting. Stacia, you say not enough info by design, I'm sure. Perhaps. I don't know. It's hard to know exactly. But also to me the concept is I can understand why it's not severely detailed, because it was something that was so far in the future from those people. They didn't, I mean, it's like, and that even kind of helps solidify the idea of why this passage is included in Revelation if it doesn't speak to stuff that happened back then. It's because he wanted them to know, number one, what was going to happen to the dead saints in the first part of the passage. He wanted them to know what's going to happen to Satan. Well, because Satan was oppressing them at the time. So what's going to happen to Satan? I'm going to bind him for 1,000 years. Nobody will have to worry about him for 1,000 years. And then after that, he'll be loosed and some things will happen. And then he's going to be cast in the lake of fire. So you can understand why this would be included in Revelation for those people, even though it wasn't about their time, because it spoke to the things they were specifically focused on, because of their persecution and Satan and the authority of Christ and the kingdom and all this stuff. So they needed to know some of these things. All right. And C. Jones, you're not saying one way or the other, just wondering where we fit in the passage. Yeah. I mean, C. Jones, after studying this event of the final judgment and the fire and all that, and all that happens to transition everyone from physical to spiritual existence, I have, what was I going to say? See, I'm losing the train of thought this morning. What's wrong with me? Where's the coffee? Here it is. What was I going to say? Let's see here. Oh, where we fit in the passage. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like after all that research and the things that I've seen, and this goes back to my video that's called The Destruction of the Earth, which is a really good video if you guys want to know more about where does all this come from, like why is this a thing. All the evidence is in that video. But I think I say it in that video too. I've come to feel like this is the closest thing to a rapture that will have ever happened. Because what happens is, as the earth is destroyed by fire, immediately all the Christians that are alive when that happens are taken to heaven. And I don't necessarily believe it's to avoid the fire. The fire is a cleansing fire. It purges flesh, and it causes us to be able to go straight to heaven. And so in that event, it's the closest thing I can imagine to a rapture, where you are immediately, your body is done and you go straight to heaven. And so, yeah, in the sense you're talking, like you, I guess, would not participate in the final judgment, you would already be taken to heaven. So I think that is kind of where I'm sitting on, I feel is correct based on what I've studied. Okay. But yeah, I think that's our place as far as Christianity. Reyna Waddell, you say, so basically only the spiritually dead are judged. I wouldn't say it that way, Reyna. Now, some people have that opinion that it's a spiritual deadness, but I don't, that spiritually dead speaking is something that's abused as a concept by Christianity. I believe that the Christians are taken to heaven. The ones that are not Christians are not. And so I just wouldn't use that spiritually dead phrase. That's all. That it's really abused, and so I just don't like it. Let's see. All right. Kingdom Within, good morning to you, sir. It's good to have you. Yes, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, yes, that's true. Do you feel, I think you are saying that may to you connect to Revelation 20? I don't know. But you say, there's one verse I'd love for you to break down, the sun being darkened, the moon not giving its light, stars falling from heaven. Yes. That verse, Kingdom, is to me, and that's of course an Olivet Discourse, that's all about what happened in the first century. Like I could read you account after account of different eclipses, sun being darkened for a day, the sun changing color all day, and the moon covering it, and all this other weird stuff that happened various times before 70 AD, many different times. And stars falling, things like that. There was a lot of that, a lot of that before 70 AD. So you say you have trouble explaining it to people? Yeah. It's because there's, to explain it and make them see, like, you have to show them the references and the writings. So you'll have to open up Cassius Dio and show them the things that he wrote about it. You have to open up Josephus. You'd have to open up Tacitus and show these different things. So anyway, I just feel like it's a hard thing to answer quickly, right? And that's the tough part. Mark 8:35, good to have you this morning. You say, can I give the meaning of 1 Corinthians 12, 1 and 2? People think Paul is saying that Israelites are being called Gentiles. Okay. Mark, I'll have to put that on my list and see if we can get to it, because we've already got a bunch and we kind of gotten started here. But if we have time, I can do that at the end. And if not, we may have to do it like next time around. Okay. So as far as C. Jones, and you have one more question there. You say, do you believe this section in the Olivet Discourse about the sun, moon, stars is literal, or is it prophetic? I think it's very literal, C. Jones. Very literal. Those things happened, and as I just said, I can read you the writings of those historians that say they happened. Now, the stars falling, that's often a reference to angels. But of course, the book of Enoch explains that the stars are angels. Okay? So that is a literal account of stars falling. Stars are angels, angels falling. There's nothing not literal about that. And so, you just, you have to, I think we have to shuck off the vestiges of symbolic interpretation, because they really fall apart in light of both the scriptures and all the other writings that talk about those things. So yes, I believe that is a very literal portion of the Olivet Discourse. Yeah. All right. I think we probably ought to move on now. We've done good on that topic. I want to move forward. The next topic is Sophia Suderman's, and you are asking about polygamy. And so I'll briefly discuss the polygamy aspect here and why it seems different. I'll word it this way. Why is polygamy accepted in the Old Testament? And, subcontext is, and not in the New. So we've talked about polygamy quite a bit before, a little bit here and there, I guess, maybe. But yeah, you do see in the Old Testament, you see that the patriarchs particularly, like, they all, many of them had multiple wives. And we saw that, for instance, Stacia had me studying Ishmael and Islam, the origins of Islam. So Ishmael was born of Hagar with Abraham, right? And that's not his wife. Sarah was his wife. And so why would he do that? It's so Abraham, I don't know, actually it was Hagar ended up being his wife, or was she just his handmaid? So anyway, but we do have lots of examples in the Bible of polygamy, multiple wives. And by the way, I've done an exhaustive study. I did a study in, I have a video called, is it called What is Biblical Marriage, I believe, or Biblical Marriage? I can't remember exactly how I worded it, but it's like, what is biblical marriage? And I talk a lot about the law concerning marriage. And in the law even, there is no law preventing multiple wives. Now, if a wife in the law had relations with multiple men, she was an adulteress. Okay? So even the law seems to be accepting of a multiple wife scenario. As long as the woman is faithful to her husband, there was no problem there. Now, there was a problem with a man stealing another man's wife. There was a problem with, in the case of a man taking a virgin and essentially, we would call it raping her, then that man was still seen to be that woman's husband and had to pay the father to keep her as his wife, because he took her as a wife and essentially joined with her. The two became one flesh, and so he took her as a wife without even discussing it with the parents, and so he owed them money, to pay for that infraction. But she was still his wife, and he was her husband. So there's all these things in the law that are very tolerant of polygamy in the sense of a man having multiple wives. It's interesting that when we talk about polygamy too, we never talk about a woman having multiple husbands, right? Never do. So just be aware that that's how it works. Now in the New Testament, like you said, Sophia, the requirements for a bishop in 1 Timothy 3 say that it should be a man of one wife, right? And I've read in the early Christian writings and in the early church fathers about marriage, and they echo that. They echo that a man should only have one wife. And what the early church fathers say about it is that essentially they say times have changed, and that some of that was kind of like the allowance for divorce in the law. It was done because of people's weakness. It doesn't specifically say that about polygamy, but it kind of infers that kind of tolerance of it. And of course, you do have to realize that especially with earliest patriarchs, there weren't that many humans on the earth. And so some of the social mores of the modern times didn't apply back then, when, the only people on earth for Seth were his sisters, right? So it obviously didn't apply then. And as time went on, they kept some of those practices as acceptable, but then as there became where that was not necessary anymore, it was more like it fell out of favor, right? It fell out of favor to marry within your family, et cetera, et cetera. And so by the time of Christ, it was definitely not tolerated. Well, I shouldn't say not tolerated. It was tolerated, but it was not recommended. And so that's why the requirements for the bishops in 1 Timothy are that they should be a husband of one wife, because that was the acceptable way for marriage to occur at the time. And I can't necessarily speak to God's personal opinion on whether having multiple wives is right or wrong, but it sounds like from everything we know, and if the early church was like that, then I'm betting that that discussion was had with Christ himself by the apostles at some point, and they were very aware of what he taught on the subject. And I would think that it's probably the correct thing that polygamy is no longer acceptable, shouldn't be acceptable, and is not the best way to do marriage. So I hope that helps, and I hope it gives you some food for thought. I'm not going to go much deeper into it today. I do see that John Jones, by the way, welcome, sir. Good morning to you. You say this from the Dead Sea Scrolls in regards to adultery and multiple wives. Says, but David had not read the sealed book of law, which is in the Ark of the Covenant, is open to him, not opened in Israel from the death of Eleazar to Joshua. The elders worshipped Ashtoreth. It was not opened in Israel. Okay, so I copied that. Said the same thing twice. But I don't necessarily see that relationship. If you have something else that relates it specifically to polygamy, then go for it. Squiffy, you said, plus wealth and resources passed on through the male, you can't afford to have one male in case they die. Yeah, from a logistics standpoint, it doesn't work too well. But anyway, yeah. So Sophia, you say thank you. You're welcome. I hope it helps. Tomcat, you say God never commanded it and didn't speak against it. Yes, that's a correct statement for sure. Pancakes, I see your comment. I don't want to read it because I don't want to get people mad. I don't necessarily agree with it, but at the same time, I think it worked back then. Like, I think it can work, but I don't think it's appropriate today, and I don't think it's what really is the best thing for humanity. And I'll say this too, the model laid out for us with the father and Israel. Remember in prophecy in the Old Testament where it says, you have gone a whoring after the pagan nations, right? He's talking about Israel. So the model in that prophetic sense of what marriage should be is that God has one nation, Israel, in the context of course, the Old Testament and the prophecies. You are my nation, Israel, and I am your God, and you have gone off after strange flesh, essentially. You have gone adultering, a whoring after other pagan nations, and I want you to come back to me. And so the picture in the prophecies about marriage is one-to-one. It's God and Israel. And then in the New Testament, in the time of Christ, it's Christ and the church, or Christ and the kingdom, so to speak. So those pictures of marriage don't ever seem to be polygamous in any sense. So if that's the picture that God presents, I would say that that's the picture we should go with. Even though he's not specific about it necessarily in the Bible itself. Superfluity of naughtiness, you say, when I say the two become one flesh, does that just mean the sex act, or does it mean joined for life? I believe, and I taught on this in that video, Superfluity, that it definitely means the flesh joining, the sexual act. That is the consummation of marriage. That's what marriage is. The word marriage means joining. And it can't mean anything else because nothing else is ever talked about. If you look at the practices of marriage in the Old Testament, what was the marriage ceremony? Do you remember this? And it's still practiced in some tribes and different parts of the world, but when they get married, they literally dance around the marriage hut in these tribes, and they send in the bride and groom to consummate the marriage in that moment. And if they don't, for instance, say the guy finds out in the marriage hut that she's not a virgin, he runs out and calls annulment right away because she cannot consummate the marriage. It's not a valid marriage. Those types of things point to an ancient tradition that marriage was about the sex act, period. It starts with that. It doesn't start with a legal contract. The legal contract came way after the original intention of God, that marriage was when a man and a woman join together, and then she is his wife and he takes care of her for the rest of his life. So that's what you see when you study it. And so I have no recourse but to agree with that wholeheartedly. That's why when in our culture people are very promiscuous, it damages lives. It destroys people's lives, both emotionally and physically, and it just ruins things. And so I just don't think that we view marriage in the right way. It's not a legal contract. That has nothing to do with it in God's eyes. I think that's just the Jewish laws. That's the Jews trying to tell us how to run our junk. And I disagree wholeheartedly with the marriage kind of licenses and contracts and garbage. I think it's garbage. What I do is I stand before God in my marriage. I join to my wife, and I will now take care of her and provide for her the rest of my life. She has provided me with progeny, with children, and there's no equal to that in this life. That she's the only one that can do that for me. And so that's what it's about. I don't care if there's a piece of paper in my file cabinet somewhere that says some stupid magistrate in some stupid courthouse said that we were legally married. Bullcrap. God is the one that seals marriage, and it's that physical union. Now, Squiffy Bear, you mentioned, do I think that there is still perhaps a spiritual element to it? Sure, I think there could be. It's hard to know what all that means, but I mean, I know that in a sense of psychology, they say that, especially Christian psychologists will say that if a woman has sexual relations with a man and then they split up, it emotionally damages both parties. I mean, both of them. It's like a bad thing, that it's almost a spiritual damage that occurs, you could say. I don't know all about that, but I say, Squiffy, that perhaps there is a spiritual element to it that occurs. There's actually a lot of spiritual things that occur when a man and a woman copulate. Okay? There's miracles that occur in the human body that science can't explain. They just cannot explain. The whole idea of conception when the egg is fertilized is something science still doesn't know how it works. They can't explain it. So I'm just saying, yes, there could be some very spiritual aspects to that too. All right, let's see, whatever else we got here. QB saying the order of things is Eve, Adam. She came out of him. He's the head. She's the image. Sort of. The thing that makes me think of is like in Genesis, in the Hebrew, and I've talked about this in the other video, but Adam is called Ish, and that's the name for man. He's Ish. And when God takes the rib and he creates Eve, he calls her Isha. So even the language kind of shows how Adam and Eve were made for each other, right? So yeah, he is the head. I wouldn't say she's the image, but she, I guess in a way, is kind of an image of man. But yeah, it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting way to think about it. Yeah, Gerald Grunwald, you're right. Matthew 5:31 says certificate for divorce. Let's look at that real quick. Let's do that. I do want to see that because you're right. It does say something about a certificate there. Matthew 5. Let me share that on the screen. Yes, whoever shall put away his wife, save for the cause of fornication, cause her to commit adultery. And whoever shall marry her that is divorced commits adultery. Is that the verse you were telling me? Because that one kind of proves my point. What? Let's see here. What was it? 5. Yeah, 5:30. Oh, I went one verse too far, but that is kind of pertinent. It said, it's been said. Now, this is crucial, Gerald. It's been said. Now, he's talking about in the past, and he's not even talking about law. He's talking about rabbinical teaching. So he says, it's been said that whoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. But that wasn't allowed for in the original law. Do you see? That came later on, and I'm not even sure that was given by God. So we have to be careful here. But he says then, whoever shall put away his wife except for fornication. See, that was the allowance, was if she had gone and committed adultery with someone else. So if there's any other reason, then he is called, if he puts his wife away for another reason, like he just doesn't like her, or he thinks she's mean, or whatever it is, then he's causing her to commit adultery when she remarries. And he's saying, whoever shall marry her that is divorced like that is committing adultery. So he's essentially putting the idea of divorce down and saying, it really isn't a good thing to do. He's saying it's really not good because it causes all sorts of problems. That's really kind of where this is headed here in this section. But yeah, it's a good verse to think of and bring up there, Gerald, because the certificates of marriage and divorce were being done by the Jewish rabbis, right? They weren't necessarily part of the law. But over the centuries, and we're talking, of course, I think between when the law was given and this time was it about 2,000 years? That's a lot of time, and a lot of time in Babylon. So who knows what they picked up along the way. But yeah, this wasn't an original practice of the Jews. So, okay. All right, let's see. Yes, kingdom within. That's a great passage, and that's what we talk about. Of course, it's quoting Genesis, right? A man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. They will be one what? It doesn't say there will be one spirit. It says they'll be one flesh. Why does it say that? Because that's the start of the marriage relationship. It is the marriage. The word marriage means the joining. It's the joining of two people. Anyway, all right. Yes, Mark 8:35. You're right. It was not a divorce clause. Jesus was just he was talking about the law there. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. He's just recounting what was being practiced at the time. That's right. All right. Let's see here. What is next? Let's move forward. I think we got to keep moving. Squiffy Bear, you say, is David considered to be a prophet? Yes, that's a good one. It's a good one. And I will say, let's first just go to your passages. You said Psalm 22:1. So let's go to Psalm 22:1. Let's see, Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me from the words of my roaring? And then you said, oh, let's see. I didn't put it on the screen. There you go. My God, why have thou forsaken me? Of course, that's what Christ says on the cross. And then you mentioned Psalm 22:18. You mentioned all these verses in this passage. That they part my garments among them, cast lots upon my vesture. I'll say in this previous verse, they may tell all my bones and look and stare on me. And then was the last section. You had 27 through 31. All the ends of the world will remember and turn to the Lord. The kindreds of the nations worship before thee. The kingdom is the Lord's. He is the governor among the nations. They that be fat upon the earth shall worship. Go down in the dust before him. None can keep alive his soul. Seed shall serve him and be accounted as a generation. And they shall come and declare his righteousness to a people that shall be born. He hath done this. Yes. Amazing. Yes. So I think based on what you're saying that you do believe he is a prophet. David was a prophet. And I would say that too. In fact, I think I've seen lots of references in Jewish circles that David was a prophet. So I don't think there's a question that he's a prophet. One thing that, and by the way, most of his prophecies seem to have to do with Christ himself. Almost all of his prophecies. Another thing we do is throne. Let's see. I know. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry, I'm just looking for something here. Yeah, Psalm 110. That's another one that's full. It's chock full of prophecy. But he says in the first verse here, he says, the Lord said unto my Lord. Well, what is this? This is Yahweh saying unto my Lord, but I think the word here is like master. The Lord said unto my master, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. Well, this is actually referenced in the New Testament in, I believe it's 1 Corinthians 15. He talks about that Christ would have to reign until all enemies were put under his feet. And the Lord will send the rod of strength out of Zion. Well, the rod of strength out of Zion, that's essentially Christ coming down from heaven to be incarnated to rule in the midst of his enemies. And so there's all these different things that David says that are prophetic. So I would say 150% David was a prophet and should be considered as such. So yeah, Squiffy in regards to that. Now, here's another interesting thing to think about. There's some people that take the position, and I'm not sure about this, but it's interesting to think about, that the 24 elders in the book of Revelation are actually the prophets that God sent to Israel. And depending on how you count the number of prophets God sent to Israel, you can come up with that number 24. There was actually a bunch, and so it's hard to differentiate very cleanly as to which 24 they might be, if that's the true correct interpretation of that. But there's a lot of interesting ideas out there that the 24 elders are actually the prophets that God sent to Israel to try to turn them back to him before the judgment. And so that's an interesting theory that I could go along with. I just don't have enough information to make a determination on yet, right? So thought I'd mention that. Let's see what you guys are saying. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, David, the good shepherd that became the king of Israel. Yes, Laura, thank you. All right, cool. Well, with that, I think we'll leave that one and go forward then to the next topic. Oh, now we're getting into it. QB, this is you, and I may need a little help here. I may need just a little help here on Tartaria, but let's see. How do I want to phrase this? How do I want to phrase this one? Kimberly Wentz, good morning to you. I see you on there joining. Thank you. It's good to have you. From Bear Creek. That sounds fun. I want to go to Bear Creek. Sounds a lot of fun. Okay. Could the Tartarian Kahn be king of the north? And Caesar of south. Okay, let's see if that'll fit on the screen. Oh, it's too big. It's too big. No, it might not be too big. Hang on. I know it's fun to watch me fiddle with my stinky titles, but we got it. Could the Tartarian Kahn be the king of the north while the Caesar is the king of the south? So, I think QB, if you don't give me more on that question, that I'm going to have trouble answering you very well. If you're asking if Tartaria was such a huge kingdom that it reigned in the northern Siberian areas, while Caesar, the Roman Caesars, were in, of course, ruling from Rome in the Roman kingdom, kind of everything to the south of that. I think that's an interesting and good, assumption about the time period of the kingdom of Tartaria. Okay. Now, to be fully transparent and aware, the kingdom of Tartaria, by the way, and I have read a few sources on this. The more I read about it, the less I agree with the Tartarian ideas online. The majority of the Tartarian Kingdom channels and what is it called? I don't know. The specific one that's like the main one that everyone sees that has the timelines and stuff. The more I find in historical references about Tartaria, the less I believe that it's anything like those channels are describing. I've told you guys on this channel before that I read the writings of Marco Polo from the 1200s. And he described, because Marco Polo, his main voyage and travels were in the kingdom of Tartaria, and no one seems to realize this. The whole book is about Marco Polo going to Tartaria and meeting the Khan and talking to him. Now, the Khan of Tartaria wanted to see about what Christianity was because he had heard about it, and he was interested in Christianity. He felt like it was a good religion, and he felt like, from what Marco Polo says in the book, it sounds like the Khan, Kublai Khan, felt like that the God of Christianity was the true God. But he said to Marco Polo in the book, he said, it's not politically expedient for me to just accept him. I'll be killed by my mystics. He had mystics, he had magicians, and they were all pagan. And so he wanted to learn more about Christianity, but he was afraid he'd get his head chopped off because his people didn't agree with Christianity and they were pagan. Okay? And his kingdom was pagan. Do you get that? So here's another thing I ran across recently that I wanted to show since we mentioned Tartaria. By the way, good morning, Selene. It's good to have you. I'm so glad to have you. Thank you for joining us this morning. I hope that you get a lot out of this. I know that, that the times are not always great for everybody all around the world, but I'm really happy to have you this morning. So thank you. Now, so when we come over here and let's do this, I'll go to my research notes here. And Tartaria, I ran across an amazing book that I'm going to share with you on this channel today that not many people go over. Let's see here. Is this it? No. Oh, come on. I got to find it. It's so good. Here it is. A book by a man named Nicholas Whitson. This book was written in 1705 by Nicholas Whitson on Great Tartaria. All right. And here's the interesting stuff I found out. This is a picture of one of the Tartarian idols that they worshipped, one of their gods. So in no way can we assume that Tartaria was some kind of Christian nation that worshipped Christ as its king. And I know 1700s being when this book was written, I don't know if, or I'm not sure if the kingdom of Tartaria even existed at that time, but it may have. It may have still existed. This book, by the way, is 100% in Russian, so I don't obviously know Russian. What I did was I found some sites that talk about the book, show you, different translated portions, and then on certain aspects, like the pages that had these illustrations, I took and translated some of the Russian in tools online and stuff like that. But this picture is the idol Zinomiueo, who was honored by the Tartars of Niush and Mughal in Sina. Okay, so this is this is one of their idols they worshipped. And here is another one of their idols they worshipped. This one is the idol Zenu, who was honored in Sina by the Tartars of Niush as well. And this is the altar. It's all a very nice rendering of their worship space for their pagan idols. This is Tartaria. This is real Tartaria, not the Tartaria channels Tartaria, okay? And so I just really challenge people that believe that cultures that worshipped things like this is another idol that was worshipped by the Tartarians, but it was brought over from China, and they still worshipped it. This is not a Christian nation that we're talking about, guys. No matter whether the Kublai Khan, the king of the Tartars that Marco Polo met, was interested in Christianity in some regard, and he was trying to get away from the pagan worship. Possibly, they were still a pagan nation, although an amazing nation, perhaps a mighty nation that ruled the entire Siberian area of the world, a huge area of the world. In the book, of course, Marco Polo Travels, it talks all about why they were that, because they were fierce and good warriors, and the Khans were able to set up an authoritative structure that helped them rule these vast areas of the world. But it was not a Christian nation. Here's more pictures from this book of idols that were worshipped by the Tartars. These two female idols were revered by the Tartars in China. The Kangpinos women's idol that was 12 fathoms high was a huge idol. You see the size of the people, and then the idol is huge. These were worshipped as part of Tartarian pagan idol worship. So I found this book, and I found it really amazing that it's so clear, but yet we have the people on the Tartarian channels, all talking about that Jesus ruled this kingdom. Here's some of their buildings. I just found it very interesting. Here's Crimea in this book. There's a lot of interesting stuff in this book, but I wish I could read the Russian because I'd probably get a whole lot more out of it. But I hope that in regards, QB, to your comment, that I do believe that in the certain times throughout history when Tartaria was at its peak, yes, I think Tartaria ruled a huge swath of the northern Europe and what we call Siberia and some of China. It was a lot. And I also think that, like you said, in the south, in the area of the Roman Empire, of course, that was centered in Rome, but there were also some other varying groups, especially in Africa and some in Northern Europe. We get into the Goths and those different groups. And by the way, which were Christian. It's another secret that I'm going to reveal in my videos about the Catholic Church and the history of Rome. Anyway, so I hope that helps, QB, and helps at least for you. Your question, it's maybe a brief answer, but I hope it helps you in your study. So let's see what else, anything in regards to that. I think you mentioned Magog in regards to Tartaria. And yes, the area of Magog was seen as what we call now Turkey and north of that. So that would include a lot of the Siberian area north of Palestine and all of that. So yes, if that ends up being a part of what we find is the Gog-Magog war, or, again, if that already happened, it's possible. So we'll see about that. And I really can't speak anymore to the Gog-Magog war. Julia, you can hardly wait for the new series. Well, I'm trying to get there. I've got a lot of the information. I'm probably close to starting to formalize the organization of the data for the first video. So it's a lot. But it's some of the most, to me, rewarding research that I've done in a while. So this kind of thing, like, sometimes I wonder, it's like, is this just something I'm interested in, or is this something people are going to really get a kick out of and enjoy too? Because to me, this is interesting. Some of the stuff I do now, I do for people, and it's not necessarily what I'm interested in. But this stuff on the Catholic Church and Rome and Islam, that stuff is amazing. I think it's groundbreaking, and I think it also will help us answer some of the questions about the problems in our chronology and timelines. So I'm just throwing that out there too. All right. Laura Masood, you ask about eclipses, and are they a bad omen? Let's talk about that. All right, so eclipses. Now, when you said this, Laura, I immediately thought of some things I read in, and I mentioned it earlier, in the historians of the first century. And I think it was in Cassius Dio's Life of Nero writing, if you wanted to look it up and read about it. I think that's where I found it. It talked about the omens of the signs in the heavens. And of course, eclipses were that. So in that time period, they definitely thought the eclipses were a bad omen. and storms and signs in the sky, stars. If they saw a comet, that was a really bad omen to them, really bad. So I will say throughout history, those things are true. They did see those things as a bad omen. Now I know that right now a lot of people in today are looking at the eclipse, I think that happened earlier this year and one coming this coming year, and they are seeing that as a bad omen or an omen of something that's happening, right? And you ask me, is this all just superstition? I think that might be where you're coming from. You may have seen some of this discussion online that there's one eclipse, the eclipse that already occurred kind of crossed the nation of the United States of America, and it went this way, and then this next one that's coming is going to go the opposite way and make an X over the country as far as their paths, right? And so that's where a lot of people's heads are at. Do I believe that it's a bad omen? I believe that it probably is some type of message, that it's some type of connection between those occurrences and what happens on the earth. I do believe that's probably true. However, the caveat is that I don't fully understand it. I have traced some of those things in the past. I've traced different star patterns, configurations, different alignments of the planets. I think it was in September of 2012, I was really focused on the alignment of Virgo, and all the planets seemed to be aligned up inside of that constellation, and it was just really felt prophetic. It felt important. But then that time came and went. So without me really fully understanding if it connected to something that occurred, or if it's just a sign of the upcoming time period, or what. So I will say this, that while I do believe, again, that there is a connection between the signs in the heavens and the things that occur on earth, I don't fully understand it. I sort of believe that the connection that is there, if humanity did fully understand it, has somewhat been lost to history. How to interpret these signs is not something that I see people doing very effectively, if they are the signs that we think they are. And it says, of course, in the Bible that the sun and moon and all the stars were given for signs and seasons. And it's not that, like the astrologers do, that we should predict our lives based upon these things in the heavens. However, it did say they were given for signs, for things. So apparently we should be aware of them in some way. So that's my hot take, Laura Masood, on eclipses. Are they a bad omen? I do think they are a warning or a sign of something. And I'm just very sketchy on how we're supposed to interpret that. So I try not to use that as a platform for me to tell people something's going to happen or something's coming, because I fully just don't understand. So that's where I stand on that. By the way, I see some welcomes coming for Kimberly Wins and Needle Creek. It's good to have you guys. I think I've seen you guys before, haven't I? Oh no, you're saying it's your first time. Well, I'm really happy that you did make it. So, and I think I said Needle Creek wrong. It's Neeld Creek. Not sure. Hope I'm saying that right if it's a name. But good to have you guys. All right, I think we'll move forward then. I've got two more things on the list, and let's see, what time is it? It's pretty late. May have to, let's see. The next one was DZL. You asked about Ezekiel 38 and 39 being connected to Revelation 20. So So let's put that on the board real quick, and I'll examine them real quick, try to get you a read, but we may have to move on kind of quick. I've got this one more thing that I want to do before we finish. So Ezekiel, let's get that up on the screen. Let's first go to Revelation 20, verse 7. Okay, so verse 7 through 10. And when the 1,000 years is expired, Satan will be loosed and shall go out to deceive the nations in the four quarters of the earth, Gog, Magog, to gather them to battle. The number is as the sand of the sea. They went on the breadth of the earth and compassed the saints about, or the camp of the saints, and the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. And the devil was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone. So as far as verse 10, I definitely don't think that's happened yet. Okay. But if it's related to Ezekiel, it could be. So let's then back up. We're talking about the battle of Gog and Magog, and let's hit Ezekiel 38 really quick. Okay. Set thy face against Gog and Magog, the chief prince Meshech, Tubal, prophesy against him. Thus says the Lord God, behold, I'm against thee, the chief prince. Gog, the chief principality of Meshech and Tubal. I'll turn thee back, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you forth, your army, your horses and horsemen. Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all with shield and helmet. Gomer, all his bands. Yes, in general, I do believe that this is a reference to the same battle. I have thought that. Now, if I did more study and changed my mind, it wouldn't surprise me if I felt like they were slightly different. But when I have come to these passages back and forth, I felt like it's the same discussion being talked about. Of course, being prophesied hundreds of years before the other one was prophesied. Meaning when the prophecies were given, right? So the prophecies given to Ezekiel 600 or so or more years before John gets the prophecy that he wrote in Revelation. So I do feel they're the same. Let me see here. Yes. It'll come to that pass in that day. I'll give Gog a place of graves in Israel, the valley of the passengers. I found this valley on a map. I know exactly where this is. It's just west of Israel, or it's west of Jerusalem and just over past the Dead Sea. And there's a valley called the Valley of Magog. It actually still retains those names to this present day. So I know exactly where this valley is that they would be burying their dead. I just wasn't able in my research to find, like, is this something that they have done before? But I guess to answer just briefly your question, DZL, I do believe that these are connected. Ezekiel 38, 39 to Revelation 20, verse 7 through 9. Now, I don't know about the verse 10 in Revelation 20 because that's talking about that Satan being thrown in the lake of fire and defeated. I don't believe that's connected to this battle. Now, in Revelation 20, of course, it comes right after, but that's because Revelation 20 is going through a couple thousand years in history, right? And so it's telling you events, but it's not telling you how far apart they are. So we have no way of knowing if the Battle of Gog and Magog is right before the devil is thrown in, or if there's time period there that lapses between. We don't know that. So yes, Ezekiel 38 and 39 I feel are related to chapter 20, verse 7 through 9. But I think verse 10 would probably come some period of time after the Battle of Gog and Magog. So I hope that helps a little bit. Let's see if you had anything to say there other than that. All right. Cool. Yes. Thank you, Neil Creek. Appreciate that on the Washington research. Good. I'm glad it helps. All right. Let's see here. Last topic of the morning. And yeah, we're getting on in time, so I want to make sure we we get this done pretty quickly. I don't want to keep you guys too long. Meaning of 1 Corinthians 12, 1 and 2. Let's just put it like that, and we will go straight there together and look at it. So if we go to 1 Corinthians 12, 1 and 2. Spiritual gifts. Of course. Why didn't I see that coming? Okay. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you be ignorant. You know that you were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led. Now your comment, Mark 8:35, was that people think that Paul is saying that Israelites are being called Gentiles. I don't understand that perspective, Mark 8:35, because the Corinthian church, and this is in 1 Corinthians, is a well-known pagan area of the world, not Jewish in any sense. That doesn't mean there weren't Jews among them, but in general, the Corinthian church was seen as a Gentile church, a church of mostly, if not all, Gentile people from that area. Corinth, by the way, it's pretty far away from Jerusalem. It's let's see, I'll show it on a map real quick. Corinth map. Sometimes the internet is cool. It really helps. Here's a picture that shows Corinth. Let's clean this up. It shows Corinth right here. That's too zoomed in to get a good sense of where that is. Let's see if we can do this. This kind of shows where it is. And you see on this portion down at the bottom, it zooms in on where Corinth is in relation to everything else. So do you see that? Of course, Palestine and Israel is right here, right? So if that's the center of Christianity and the Judaism, this is the center of Judaism over here, and Christians in Corinth live over here. Of course, this is close to Rome, and it's close to what we would actually in this time period start calling Gog and Magog areas. These are pagan peoples. They are Gentiles. So I don't think in any sense that this passage is calling Israelites, calling them Gentiles. It doesn't make sense that would be the interpretation here. So I hope that kind of answers your question on that one, Mark 8:35. But yeah, I don't think it at all has anything to do with Jews here. I don't think it does. But the Gentiles were certainly carried away to dumb idols and led that way because that was their religions. And in the case of the Corinthians, they were going back to them even after Christianity came in. And so they were having trouble staying on the right path because they had grown up worshiping pagan idols. And the men going over to the local temple of Aphrodite every other day and fornicating with the prostitutes there. And because that was their normal practice, when Christianity came in, they accepted it, but then they would fall back into this stuff. They were so used to it, and probably in a sense at first didn't even understand what was wrong with it. It took them time, and it was hard to break those habits. So yeah, this is an interesting thought, but the Corinthian church was definitely a Gentile church. John Jones, you say, don't forget the northern tribes were prophesied to be identified as Gentiles, and the Messiah said to go to them. Yes, that's true. That's true. So yeah. By the way, Paul says in Romans that the gospel had spread all over the known world. It literally had been spread all over the known world at that point. It says it in Romans. I'll let you find the passage. I can't remember which chapter it's in. He says, we know now that the word, the gospel, has gone to all nations. It says it. So anyway. All right, guys. Well, I think based on the time and the fact that we got through a ton of good stuff, that we can be finished for the day. I hope that's okay with you guys. I've enjoyed it a lot, but it's always a pleasure. I've really enjoyed seeing some new faces, some new names in there. You are appreciated from wherever you are. Appreciate you joining us. I know it's not always easy, but I so enjoy it, and I just enjoy being a part of the family of God. I think that's what we're doing here, trying to find truth together, working on it together. Thank you guys for your input. It's invaluable to me. It makes this live stream what it is. You know, I do one thing with the videos, but the live stream gives us a chance to connect in a different way, and I just really enjoy that. So thank you all. God bless you this week. Be safe. Take care of each other. And pray for me and for each other that we all are moving the right direction with all of this. Thank you so much. God bless.